Well, thanks once again for joining and welcome to our Secretary Speaker Series. For those who haven't joined us before, these are public dialogues that are an opportunity for us to lift up big ideas and our priorities across California and introduce you to extraordinary leaders doing remarkable things. My name is Wade Crowfoot, and I lead our Natural Resources Agency. And one of the most fun times of the month for me is when I get to moderate these discussions. I'll kick things off by saying Happy Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which of course takes place in the month of May. Across our agency, we are proud to celebrate the unique cultures that make us Californians and make us Americans. And we do that by celebrating these heritage months, which are a great opportunity to come together, to meet new people, and to learn new things. And this month is no exception. Thanks to a remarkable coordinating or organizing committee, we've had events across our agency, everything from a virtual series like this on how to work for the state and build your career with the state, to in-person events like a public event happening at China Camp State Park in the Bay Area this weekend. Again, the idea is to lift up the contributions of this community in our agency and across the state. And so for today, we are really excited to be joined by some leaders doing some remarkable things, both outside of state government and here within our state departments. Before we get underway, though, I want to share a little bit more about how we hold these discussions to make it maximally beneficial for you. My colleague Geeta Chandra, who is responsible for organizing this discussion, is staffing the chat function of the platform. So you should open the chat because as we're talking and introducing people, she'll provide links on our speakers and their organizations, as well as information sources that come up in the conversation. There's also a Q&A button that you can push at the bottom of your screen at any point during our discussion. If you have a question, an observation, sometimes we'll be able to answer via the keyboard and everyone will see both the question and the answer once we provide it. And sometimes questions that are asked are good for me to ask to our panelists, particularly at the end when we come together as a group. We are recording the discussion, and starting tomorrow, you can go on our resources.ca.gov website and get a recording of the conversation. Included with that will be a copy of all the information provided in the links. So for those of you who might be interested in some information provided in the chat, I should say, we'll be able to find it there. So let's jump in. Again, May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and it's an opportunity to lift up leaders across this community doing great things. And we have a wonderful set of leaders today to visit with. Geeta puts those folks in the chat function, so you should see who we're talking to today. And I'm pleased to first introduce a remarkable scientist and a former colleague, Dr. Rod Fujita. Rod spent much of his career at the Environmental Defense Fund, which is a national environmental organization leading the oceans innovations work that's happening there. So Rod, it's great to see you on the screen. You and I used to be a few doors away from each other at the EDF office in San Francisco well over a decade ago. I'm excited to introduce you to everybody and just have you talk about the work that you've done and in oceans conservation and the arc of your career. I think interesting to people joining discussions like this is just how people that are doing the kind of work that you're doing got to where you are. So welcome, Rod.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Nice to see you again after all these years. Let me start by saying that I'm a child of immigrants, like so many Californians and indeed Americans are. My grandparents came from Japan and from Spain, and two of them settled in Los Angeles and two of them settled in Guadalajara. So I kind of got the ocean culture from all sides in a way. I grew up in Huntington Beach, down in Southern California, about a mile from the ocean, and really enjoyed looking at that vast expanse, the beautiful sandy beaches of Southern California. But it wasn't until I got on my bike and discovered the tide pools of Corona del Mar that I realized that the ocean was full of this amazing life. And it was really those creatures that grabbed my attention and sort of forged my love of the ocean at an early age. I pursued that as an undergraduate at Pitzer College, studied marine biology there, and then had the opportunity to travel to Japan, where the kind of ocean culture reinforced itself in me. I studied how to grow stuff in the ocean, and I realized while there that I needed some more science skills, right? I was an overconfident young person and got in over my head. Had a wonderful experience going up and down the coast of Japan, exploring the culture and learning some stuff about aquaculture. But that whole experience that year in Japan led me to pursue a PhD in marine biology at the Marine Biological Lab on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And it was there that I really got my scientific training and kind of launched my career in applied science in the service of ocean conservation.
That's remarkable. And I just learned so much in that couple minutes that I didn't know having worked together. So it's nice to actually have that profile. And it's interesting. It sounds like your, background, both the Japanese ancestry and the Mexican ancestry, as you point out, is well aligned with your focus on ocean conservation. And you've done so much over your career, specifically around innovations in ocean conservation. I wonder over those years, I imagine you've mentored younger people coming into this work. What advice would you have for young people, and particularly folks in the AAPI community around pursuing this area and growing their careers as you have?
Well, let me preface these remarks by saying that I'm still working on it, right? It's aspirational. But what I would say is, please don't make the mistake I did. And when I was young, I assumed that if I could just engender understanding through science, everybody would love the ocean and take care of it. And it was kind of naive. And it took me about 20 years of trying to do that with my first book, Heal the Ocean, telling stories about how great the ocean is and how important it is to protect it. But I realized that, being a scientist, a natural scientist, has its limits when you're trying to change things in the real world. And so many young people I know and have known throughout my career are really dedicated to that. They don't want to just do science to generate knowledge. They want to really make the world a better place for us all to live in and for the biodiversity that we share this planet to thrive in. So I guess my words of advice after 40 years of trying to do this is to recognize the limitations of science and the limitations of just understanding leading to action. It's not necessarily so. It works for some people when all the enabling conditions are there for action. But for many, many people, it's important to listen really deeply and understand where they are, really see them as humans, bring your whole self to the work, your feelings, your compassion, as well as your scientific skills, and use that understanding and compassion to craft solutions that work for people and nature. And in fact, that's why I embarked on my second book, was to understand human behavior better, because I had studied marine ecosystems, not humans. And it turns out that humans it's much more important to understand why they do the things they do in order to shape smart policies and craft solutions that can really change things on the water. So I guess I would leave it there, bring your humanity to the work. Don't just be a scientist, but be a full person.
Well, that's so compelling, and we've learned at our agency, we're driven by science and we're making science-based decisions. But to your point, it's not just, you bring the scientific data or information, and then all of a sudden it drives the decision. It's much more complex than that. And you ended up, spending much of your career in a non-governmental organization or an NGO, which can sometimes be characterized as an organization. Did that information that it's not just about the science inform, your joining and staying with the Environmental Defense Fund, or how would you describe that sort of trajectory in your career?
Yeah, well, actually, after I got my PhD, I was having a wonderful time being a scientist. It was really thrilling, to discover new things and to write papers and publish them and stuff. But then during one of my postdocs, I lived on this coral reef about 5 miles off of the Florida Keys for a year, trying to understand the coral reefs there. And I spent so much time in the water. It was kind of like backpacking for a year, where you're in nature, and being in nature that long kind of changes your relationship with nature. You're no longer walking or just swimming through it. You're getting to know the individual creatures and understanding their habits in kind of a more personal way. And so the PhD gave me the scientific skills and knowledge to appreciate that we really do, we need to protect these fragile systems from human activities like oil drilling and pollution and climate change. But it wasn't until that experience on the coral reefs I had an emotional investment. And I think that combination led to a real awakening in me as a young scientist. And I sort of, soon after that, I abandoned my dreams of being a professor and looked for jobs where I could, do something that would matter immediately. Because the coral reefs I was working on actually were under threat from the sale of oil drilling leases at the time. It's back in the late 70s, early 80s. So yeah, then I found this job at the Environmental Defense Fund. I had to transplant myself from Florida Keys to New York City, which was quite a cultural shock, but it was worth it. It led to a really fruitful career. I co-founded the Oceans program there and found other people. There's nothing like working with like-minded, smart people, right, at a place like an Environmental Defense Fund. Everybody dedicated and to using their skills to make the world a better place.
That's incredible. And I love that, like while you navigated so many different experiences in your career, it was so purpose driven from the beginning, and you found a way to make such a huge impact.
Yeah, thanks for that.
That's
When
really
I
inspirational.
Well, thank you. You're choppy a little bit, but I think I got what you said, and I just wanted to thank you for those kind words, Mr. Secretary, and also to say that it was really the mentors that I was able to work with over many years that guided me along this path. I was so lucky to meet brilliant scientists in Woods Hole who really were practical and trying to solve real world problems, and then folks during my postdocs and especially at the Environmental Defense Fund helped me along the way, and I hope I can do the same for those who want to choose this kind of a path.
Well, thanks so much, Rod, or Dr. Fujita, as you're known. Really appreciate the conversation, and we'll bring you back into the group discussion. Next, I'm going to introduce a colleague here in state government named Harriet Lai Ross. And Harriet serves as the Director of Regulatory Affairs as at what we call BCDC, which is the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission. So welcome, Harriet. Good to see you.
Hi, thank you, Secretary Crowfoot. Should
So
I
for those,
begin?
some of us know a lot about BCDC, while others may not know anything. So before we get into sort of you and your career as we're celebrating here today, can you just share a little bit more about BCDC?
Yeah, BCDC serves as the regional regulatory and planning agency for the San Francisco Bay. So, as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs. So, any actions that occur within the San Francisco Bay and within the first 100 feet of the shoreline has to get a permit from our agency. We also, regarding our planning functions, we provide a lot of tools and databases for our over 50 constituents, cities and counties, on how to address sea level rise and climate change in the Bay.
That's great. That's really helpful. And I note that I sort of started my environmental career in California state government with BCDC, serving as an alternate to a local official. So I know how important it is, and and the arc of your career. And then also, obviously, given it's AAPI Heritage Month, how your cultural heritage has played into your career growth.
Yeah, well, I'm also a child of immigrants. My parents are from Hong Kong. I remember visiting many national parks, renting RVs, going to Yellowstone and going hiking as a child. So I've always been interested in conservation. My undergraduate degree is in environmental science. I started off working a few years at a consulting firm in the environmental field when I realized community planning and sustainability was my true passion. So I went back to school and got my graduate degree in urban planning from UCLA. I'm pretty different from the rest of my family. I mean, I think there's a lot of engineers, a lot of computer programmers, but no one in my family does what I do here at the state government or in conservation. So that's pretty exciting. Um, so I have done work with communities from all over the state in the past to project, develop projects and um, uh, really that different communities wanted and would benefit everyone. I used to love getting out those big aerial maps when town hall forums were still in person and asking people which part of the community they wanted to conserve or what they wanted to see in the future. Love talking to people and asking them what was important to them and understanding what they wanted and needed and what would make communities better for them. So this is where my background in both environmental science and planning was useful, really to helping those communities determine how they could be more sustainable or grow more sustainably. What are those changes they were willing to make to meet those state climate goals? So this is where, my background of just my cultural background and trying to really understand and wanting to hear and lift up those voices to be involved in these planning processes. I'm always pitching, we need to talk to all interest groups, not just politically to get a project through, but to really understand what people want and need. I've talked with people from all over the state, from all walks of life, and people want very similar things and their values are the same. It doesn't matter what your cultural background is. Everybody wants clean air and water. They want a great place to leave for their children for the future. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and when I reflect on the San Francisco Bay Area, just recognizing the breadth of communities it has, it seems like your commitment to ensuring that the state agency that you work for is out there meeting with people on their own terms in their own languages in their own communities to help those impacted by the decisions actually have a say in the decisions seems really, really important. Right?
Yes, no, definitely. And, BCDC was on the forefront in passing a set of environmental justice policies back in 2019. And so we do require all projects affecting underserved communities, vulnerable communities, for our project proponents to be engaging in those communities and talking with them, sharing project details and trying to figure out what would work for those communities themselves. And we require them to document their disproportionate impacts in their environmental documents. So, especially given with everything going on in the federal government nowadays, it's even more important that we have these policies in place and really making sure what we're approving works for everybody.
I couldn't agree more, and I find at this moment, given these attacks, on priorities like environmental justice, it is so important to break down just what these terms mean. And of course, when we're talking about environmental justice, we're talking about ensuring that, communities that have suffered the burdens of environmental impacts actually have influence in decision making on their communities, and that we're working to protect those communities, both that have been most impacted by pollution or environmental threats, but then also most vulnerable to these growing threats of climate change. So, I'm as proud as ever of the work that you all are doing at BCDC and that we're doing across the agency to make sure that we're protecting all Californians, which is really what that's about. I'm interested personally in your world, and what advice you would have to young people coming out of grad school to find a job like yours, and have you experienced barriers in terms of your own professional growth, and how did you surpass those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, without giving my age too much here, but the beginning of my career, I was definitely the only woman of color in many, many project team meetings. So here we are as planners, planning for sustainability, talking with all these communities that were much diverse than the project team itself. I often felt I was the only person that had a different, slightly different voice. So those were hard. Thinking back about it now, at the time, I didn't know any different, to be honest with you. But I always felt the need to be over prepared for any meeting, to speak with confidence. Felt like I had to be better at my job to be taken seriously and heard. So people that know me know that I'm pretty uh, direct, and I'm going to be heard. So so that's not a problem. But yeah, so definitely things are changing, and planners are now much more diverse, and obviously there's a lot of diversity in environmental scientists, but it was not the case. It was not the case when I first started my career.
So glad you shared that reality check and pointed out just that diversity in these groups is strength. The difference in perspective, the difference in experience, particularly if we're serving the public interests. What we don't want are all people with the exact same experiences, life experiences or professional experiences that think the same way, right? When we bring in difference, we build a stronger process or product, I think.
Absolutely. Different perspectives are what we need. It absolutely is and you're not just serving the communities, but just different ideas make better projects and plans. So back to your question about what advice I would give to the young AAPI community now is really that you can make a difference. There are far more diversity in planning, environmental conservation now, but we need more. We always need more. And it only just strengthens what we're doing here at the state.
Absolutely. And we want to build a workforce that reflects just this incredible diversity across the state, because having folks of, different experiences, different communities matters, and it impacts decisions. So, Harriet, I'm so appreciative of all that you're doing and look forward to your career continuing to unfold. While you protect the Bay and help build the future of the Bay, maybe last question I'd ask is just how do you guys feel? This is a little bit off topic, but how do you feel about all the sea level rise threats in the Bay and what you all are doing?
Yeah, we're trying so hard to make sure everyone understands it. And I think, the Bay Area is a very sophisticated, population and community. So people get it, they understand it, they know change has to happen. And so that's really what we're trying to do in permitting projects is to do it right. So it's difficult to continue allowing development on the shore if you can't protect it in the future.
So
So
true. Yep, and Geeta's put in a bunch of links on BCDC, so I hope some who have joined us today dig in a little bit deeper to your work in the BCDC. Thanks so much.
thank you.
The next leader that I want to introduce is also a colleague in state government. Rody Soria represents the California Conservation Corps. He's the director of our Inland Empire division or district, I should say, of the Conservation Corps. Rody, good to see you. It looks overcast where you are. It's certainly sunny in the Bay Area. Are you down south?
I am, San Bernardino.
Oh, great. Well, listen, much like Harriet, when I asked my opening question for her about her agency, for those who don't know, talk a little bit about the California Conservation Corps as sort of the foundation of our discussion, because it's an incredible organization that not enough people know about.
Yeah, we're one of the best kept secrets in state government. The California Conservation Corps is a state department that falls under Secretary Crowfoot's resource agency. We were established back in 1976 under the first term of Jerry Brown. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary. The CCC is a youth-oriented program for 18 to 25-year-olds to serve 1 year of service committed to California. They receive a variety of different certifications from chainsaw training to first aid, CPR, to firefighting and flood certificates where they can become a wildland firefighter. They also earn a stipend while they're with us for 1 year. They can earn a scholarship as well. It really provides them a 1 year opportunity to perform meaningful work throughout California, building trails throughout the trail systems that California has to offer, to fighting fires. And for those who may not know, our department responded to both the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire at the time it was burning, and then afterwards we mitigated some of the flood concerns that were going to occur when the rain season came. And beyond those two fires, we are just about all the other fires that may have been burning throughout California. So we have 25 locations throughout the state of California. 10 of them are residential. We're probably the quickest, easiest, and fastest way somebody without any fire experience that wants to become a wildland firefighter to become one. We hire basically every month, since it's only a 1-year program, although they can be extended up to 3 years. However, it's a wonderful opportunity for those folks who may be searching for work, both in the environmental field or just looking for work, to provide them 1 year service to provide, again, meaningful work protecting and enhancing California's natural resources. It's a wonderful opportunity. And if by chance, if you know anybody looking for work, maybe when you return back to home tonight and see somebody laying on the couch playing video games or just looking for work, let them know about the CCC. We'll drop a link in the chat box. It's basically ccc.ca.gov. So again, it's a wonderful opportunity. My hopes is that there are individuals on this call that may have been in the Corps at one time or another. The Corps members that we hire, in my opinion, will be the future stewards of this department, this agency, and we'll have a first-hand view of the work that needs to be accomplished in the next decade or so.
Rudy, I totally agree. And I find really inspirational hanging out and spending time with these Conservation Corps members. Everyone from folks who have graduated from college to those who don't yet have high school diplomas, and it really is an opportunity for public service and skills building. And I've been so proud that hundreds of Corps members have been hired by the state over the last just few years, including in CAL FIRE and state parks and Fish and Wildlife. And one of the things that really always impresses me about the Conservation Corps when I'm out there in the field with you and others is just the fact that it really does represent all of who California is, whether it's geographic area, income level, cultural race and ethnicity, etc. So how does your own cultural identity essentially inform the way that you work and lead these young people?
Well, my father is from the Philippines and my mother is from Greece. They met and got married while he was stationed on the island of Rhodes, where he served nearly 30 years in the Coast Guard. And I can recall from a very young age him taking pride in his uniform, just ironing it every day. It went beyond just ironing. It represented his professional appearance, his readiness to work, and his commitment to do well. He was also devoted to the Coast Guard. He took pride. I can't recall a time where my father might have missed a day of work. He was so dedicated and devoted to working. He believed in team concept. He believed in his work, his co-workers, and he really believed in his unit. He also took pride into the fact that he was in the Guard, doing a service to the country, doing a service to the coast. He was very, very adamant and proud of the fact that he was in there. He would boast about it in barbecues, parties, in gatherings. And I try to instill these qualities in the Corps members and staff that join our program, to take pride in the uniform that they're wearing, not only in its appearance, but what it means. To wear a uniform in the California Conservation Corps, to go out and do public service, to enhance, again, California's natural resources and what it represents. It represents our department. It represents the state. They should be proud in wearing that uniform. And then to be devoted to themselves and trying to get the most they can out of the Corps. The Corps has these vast array of opportunities for, again, somebody with minimal knowledge. And even we have our own high school diploma for folks who just need a high school diploma. In fact, we just graduated 6 of our Corps members received their high school diploma yesterday. And we're doing another statewide graduation at the Resource Building come June. So again, just be devoted. I try to push for them to stay focused and devote their opportunity with us in enhancing their careers, and then really be proud of the work that they're doing. Be proud of the fact that they are building that trail. They are making it safe. They are learning a skill to help put out the 4 fires that will burn in California throughout this coming season and in future seasons. So just take pride in the fact that they are doing a service to their community and to their state. So I try to instill those qualities in all our Corps members on a daily basis. And as we start thinking about projects and work, try to relate those segments into each aspects of their daily activities.
That's great. Hey, I've got a question that just came to mind, and it may be a tough question, but I want to ask it. So, on your crews, you have Corps members that come from vastly different backgrounds. Like I said, different places, of course, but different cultural backgrounds as well. And you've got to get folks working together as a team. They're living together, working together for months at a time. Maybe it's a metaphor for California, the United States, where we have people that are so different from one another living together, and we ultimately want to go in the same direction. How do you, as a leader within the Corps, balance or help people bring their own sort of identities into this work and find common ground and purpose with others? And how does cultural identity play into that?
Well, CCC has a diverse group of individuals that join our program from various different countries, from their religions to all aspects of life. It's kind of a representation of California. It first starts with them fully understanding what the CCC is, in my opinion, and what our main mission is and what our accomplishments are. And then we blend that together to try to create a family atmosphere that we are a team, that we need everybody in order to get something done. One person individually can't complete the assignment all by himself. In that, we do have our policies. We have our EEO policies. We're strict on that. We enforce that. But that aside, it's really just building this team concept of we're all in this together, and then take whatever we can from their own perspective, from their own cultures. We have times we'll have certain meals prepped for that nationality or that culture. We'll have a suggestion box for them to input their ideas and how we can incorporate that. We'll have daily activities and lectures and topics where they all have this individual opportunity to express what maybe even their concerns are. We have a community advisory board, our CAB board, where it's an elective group within the community that represents all the crews, and they have an opportunity to speak up as well. So, and then we go camping together. Our spikes where we have to be in places together, we're confined to the area to where, in a sense, that we're living together. We're all roommates at a campsite. We're what we call a spike operation, where the project may be too far to commute on a daily basis, that we'll go out there and we'll camp there. We'll camp at the work site, and from the work site, we'll go out to the project site. So they learn to live together, and to be all honest, everybody wants to try. Everybody wants to help. It's very rare that we come to an occasion where somebody's going to be totally disruptive. They know what the Corps can offer them, and they all want to achieve that goal on their own, whatever their own objectives are. Get a high school diploma, or to get that job with state parks, or get that job with Cal FAR. They all know that this is a means towards an end, and if we can all do it together in a cohesive manner, it's better for everybody. And I think down the road it may take a week or two, a month, but I think eventually they all get that.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you, and I've really appreciated that you all help everyone feel comfortable bringing their authentic selves to the program, and not give that up, but then move everyone towards a common mission, even if they come from such different places. So it's a joy to see, to be quite honest. And I really thank you and your colleagues for the work you do, Rhodey. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Secretary.
I want to shift to another colleague, and this is the person I work with quite literally every day. Her name is Stephanie Shimazu, and she serves as the top lawyer in our agency, our general counsel at the Natural Resources Agency. And I can brag about you a little bit, Stephanie. You're as smart as they come, very collaborative and strategic, and always really kind of modest in terms of the work that you do. So I get to hear a little bit more about you and you talking about yourself today. But Stephanie, first question I'd ask is, attorneys, once coming out of law school, there's so many different options that you have, and working in government is not the most lucrative one. Newsflash, right? So, what drove your career toward public service, and just talk about the trajectory of getting to where you've gotten to.
Yeah, it was kind of a windy road. So just starting off, I think back in college, I was thinking about getting my master's in social work. I wanted to do the whole contribute and support and do community work. But then law school was also an option, and I ended up going that route. But I think I kept those same values, and so I did wanted to go into public service. I started my career off at the city attorney's office in Sacramento, and then after pretty like maybe a couple years, moved over to the state. And it's funny, people always say, "Why did you move to the state?" So I was born and raised in Sacramento. So my parents, all of my aunts and uncles, my cousins, everyone worked for the state. Growing up, I honestly thought that when you got to be an adult, you just worked for the state of California. So I didn't realize there were other options. So I was already kind of headed down that road. So I did make the break from the city to the state. My first job was actually the Department of Corrections. And there, I learned a lot in terms of just how state processes works and the laws and the regs and yes, the bureaucracy, but try to manage that. And also realize that the state of there's my lights going, is a big place. And so I think if you have an interest or a passion, there is somewhere in the state of California you can find your place. I like the diversity of it, and I am not opposed to change. So I moved around a lot. I think this is I think it's my 9th state agency. So like in a nutshell, I was at corrections, I worked at social services, I was at legislative counsel's office. I kind of moved up when I was a deputy legal affairs secretary in the office of the governor. From there, I was a commissioner and chair of the Gambling Control Commission. And then shifted, I came to CAL FIRE to be the chief counsel, which is where I met, a lot of my colleagues. People stick around. So that was kind of the drawback home to the Natural Resources Agency. But before I came here, I was also the director of Bureau of Gambling Control in the Department of Justice under the Law Enforcement Division. So I was able to take advantage of moving around, but also doing legal and non-legal jobs. So I always say, yeah, I'm really grateful. I've had time of my life at the state, so it's been good.
Really incredible that you've done that. You've sort of worked on that many subjects, because I know you as an expert on the topics we work on, and meanwhile you've become expert on all of these other topics. And I'm with you that state government is an incredible place to work. And for those who are really interested in doing different things, you can move around and you can build a really diverse portfolio in your career. Given the month that we're celebrating, Stephanie, I'm interested in what insights or strengths do you think that folks from the Asian American Pacific Islander community bring to this work, whether it's on environmental protection and restoration, or writ large toward in the public interest?
Yeah, I think like some of the other panelists, I think diversity is good, right? So bringing different perspectives and having, my culture in the mix and be there, I think is important. I'm not sure. I always kind of struggle with it because I know how I was raised and kind of the values that I have. And I don't want it to be sounding stereotypical, but yeah, it was very, it was very firm and kind of strict. I think my kids will call me, like an Asian mom. So I'm very, direct and wanting them to do things. But I think it's just, and within the AAPI community, there are so many different cultures, right? So we are diverse within our within that group. So I don't know. I think that it's just always having different people at the table. So I think that my background also, I am not outdoorsy now, but once upon a time, I feel like my family, there was a lot of family gatherings and there was like a lot of camping and fishing and things like that. So I try to remember that and bring that to my job now.
Well, I'll also point out that in a lot of public opinion research that's done in California on Californians and their environmental views and their support for environmental policy, the AAPI community comes out, when broken out by race and ethnicity, actually comes out among the highest in terms of supporting strong, protections, environmental protections and policy. So that's just a sort of an interesting fact. Stephanie, I'm so grateful for the work that we do together, and it's fun to talk in this context.
You too.
Uh,
Thank you.
The last panelist I want to bring is my colleague and friend, Nowaki Schwartz. Nowaki helps actually organize months like these. She is driving this work. She's leading this work across our agency to ensure that we're really lifting up all Californians. We call that equity and environmental justice. And in these times, I always talk about the need to break down those labels and terms in ways that people that might not follow this or not actually be drawn to these priorities to understand. So Nowaki, great to see you. If maybe start out, talking about your work. What do you do at our agency?
Um, so it's funny that you say that because I think a lot of people, when I say, oh, I'm the Deputy Secretary for Equity and Environmental Justice, inevitably the second question is, what is that and what do you do? And I really try to break it down into very simple terms. And what I tell people is that, I think of my job as really kind of breaking down barriers and opening doors for people. And what I mean by that is, making sure that everyone has access to our policies and programs and our processes and really rethinking how people engage with government. How are they applying for jobs? How are they accessing, our public lands, our mountains, our coast, and our trails? And how are they making their voices heard? And I think when we really work to improve all of these processes, it benefits everyone. So it's kind of a win-win for all Californians. But it's a real range of things that I do. I work with a lot of our departments as well on individual projects.
And I so appreciate your leadership. I always think about the work in your work in three areas. One, ensuring that our workforce reflects California and its diversity, and that people, regardless of your background, feel supported in growing their careers, right? And then you've been a leader in ensuring that all communities and groups have access to state funding, really breaking down barriers. In the past, it's been so complicated to get state funding. Only those, most affluent communities sometimes are able to compete for the funding, right? And then that third area, which you've also driven on, is helping those impacted by the decisions we make actually figure into the decision making, right? All the process. And so huge thanks for that work and for helping people understand that really it's just about ensuring that we're a fair place that gives everybody the opportunity to thrive. So just talk a little bit about your own life and your cultural heritage. You're one of our Southern California team members, born and raised in Long Beach. And how did your own cultural heritage, as well as your growing up in Long Beach, impact your trajectory, and how did you grow your career?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people, my trajectory was not, in a straight line. I was born in Long Beach to a mixed race family. My mother is Japanese, and my father was from Ohio. They were both studying art, and so they met in art school, and they really instilled in me just a real sense of right and wrong. They were both, relatively quiet, and it was all about like working hard, keep your head down, and just do the work. And I remember really helping my mom navigate American culture and translating things for her, helping her with documents when my dad wasn't around because he, worked a lot. And I remember, Vietnamese kids coming into our schools, and I was in the, not to date myself, but I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and there weren't a lot of mixed kids around, and there were, a number of immigrants at that time coming over from Vietnam, and I remember how people were not always very kind to my mother, and people were not always very kind to me, and people were not always very kind to the immigrants, that I befriended at school. And so it really kind of instilled in me, I've always had a soft spot for the underdog. And, and, I went on to become a print reporter. And, that old saying, you afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. And I was a print reporter for a long time, and I eventually transitioned into covering environmental issues, which was absolutely fascinating to me because there is a lot of, a good deal of conflict because people are very protective of their open spaces, and especially in California, and it's really important to us. And eventually, I transitioned into state government and got hired at the California Coastal Commission, which, at the time was one of the departments I was covering, and worked as in public affairs, worked there for 8 years and just kept saying yes to everything that they threw at me. And by the time I left, I was the deputy director for communications, environmental justice, and tribal affairs. And then I came here in 2023. So that's it in a nutshell.
Amazing. It's great. And I think that your background as a journalist is such good training for the work that we do, right? Which is to help break down sometimes this opaque process and decision making in government in ways that people can understand. So I'm interested, Nowaki, it's been a challenging year, obviously, doing the work that you do, given, this weaponization of the labels, for the principles and the priorities, the values that we have. So I'll ask you a sort of a counterintuitive question, which is, what makes you hopeful? I think we need,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great question. I'm kind of inherently an optimist, and I frankly think that you need to be to work in this space because the burnout rate is really high. So I really, I think that you really need to kind of think about, what the goals are and what you're actually trying to achieve, and even small steps forward. If you collectively look at kind of across time, how much progress we've made. Especially, I think, making sure that underserved communities have a seat at the table and are heard. When we look at it, over these past few months, then yes, it's hard to be hopeful. But when you look at the progress over like a longer period of time, I still think that we're moving forward. I still think that we're, making progress. And I think back to, when I was working on the Coastal Commission's environmental justice policy, which was passed in 2019, and the difference between 2019 and today, and just how across the state we have just done a much better job of really engaging these communities. And when I talk with these, communities, and when I talk with folks, it's, people understand, in government what environmental justice is, and people understand, why it's important for us to, work with these communities. And that actually makes me hopeful, and I really kind of hang on to that.
Oh, that's great. And it's great to live in California where we can still, proudly lift up these values and talk about them in ways that people understand. So let's bring the group back together for our remaining 10 minutes and get everybody on screen, the Brady Bunch or Hollywood Squares, as it were. Well, thanks everybody, and I'll just remind people who have tuned in, if you have a question for the group, now is a great time to press the Q&A button and ask it. And I'll keep that open so I see any questions that are coming in. And of course, got a lot of emojis as you all were talking, so clearly what you're saying is resonating. I want to ask people to reflect on sort of the path forward. Recognizing you all have succeeded and are succeeding in your careers, and also, lift up the importance of diversity and, your cultural heritage in AAPI and the AAPI community. So what advice or direction or insight would you have for organizations to continue to support good work and and enable everybody to bring, themselves and their backgrounds to the work. This the strength and diversity that we've talked about. Any insights you have for people who are joining around how they can build this muscle in their own organizations?
Can I just say how inspiring Noaki's framing of what equity and environmental justice really means? I mean, those are trigger words in the culture wars right now, but by saying and using plain English to say that what it means is opening doors and breaking down barriers, every person in America believes that. And it's one of those fundamental values that humans have since we're 2 years old, when we know what's fair and what's not fair. So I think one key and one thing that makes me optimistic is that we have folks who can articulate complex ideas in simple ways that resonate with people and resonate with core values that everybody shares. I think that's the way we come together eventually. There, we are living through challenging times, but I also agree that the moral arc of history does bend toward justice. We have to do the bending, though, ourselves.
Oh, so well put. So well put. One question has come in, which is a fun one, which is, what are your favorite places to get outside in California?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think for me, I grew up spending time in the Mendocino coast during the summers. And, for me, nature has always been like visiting an old friend. It never rejects you. It always welcomes you. It's always, a wonderful place to be. And so I would probably go with the Mendocino coast. So.
Nice. Harriet, I saw you took yourself off mute.
I was going to say the beach, San Diego. The beach is, I just think, my absolute favorite. Weather's always perfect.
That's a fact. In California beaches, there's nothing quite like them. How about you, Rhodey?
For me, it's traveling up the 395, headed up to Mammoth. The Mammoth Lake area is a beautiful spot. There's a variety of different drop-off points throughout the 395. Manzanar's right off the 395 if you're interested in going there. But if you travel up north, going through Lone Pine, Big Pines, hitting all the pines, but ending up in the Mammoth Lake areas. And then if you wanted to take a jaunt, the back entrance into Yosemite is always there. So going up 395 has always been a pleasure of mine.
I absolutely love that route, and I've only discovered that in this job. And they call it the quiet side of the Sierra Nevada, and there's no scene quite like those Eastern Sierras. All right, Rod, I'm going to put you on the spot, and then Stephanie, you already disclosed you're not much of an outside person, but you're going to have to answer this.
All right. Well, I love all those places, but one of the great things about being retired is that I have so much more time to drive around in my camper van and explore California. And I've been able to see some remote corners and, doing dispersed camping on forest land and BLM land and all over the place. It's just a marvelous, marvelous landscape to explore, the ocean, the mountains, the plains in the middle. I love it all.
Oh my God, I'm so envious. Okay, so you have to point out one or two places that surprised you just in terms of its beauty or its uniqueness.
I never get tired of going to Point Reyes National Seashore. And one reason it's spectacular, of course, but now that I'm retired, I get to go on weekdays, and there's so much wildlife abounding in that. Just by being quiet, sitting in one place for a while, you can see all kinds of things happening. It's quite amazing.
Awesome. Stephanie.
This is not a fair question for me. So, but I will say I am not, and I thought about this when I came here. I'm not outdoorsy, but I will say Wade, from coming to the Natural Resources Agency, has really made me appreciate. And so now when we go on vacation with my kids, I always take them somewhere in the summer. We always make sure to go to a forest, to go to a beach. We go to a lot of natural history museums. So I can't say I have a favorite place, but I do feel like this job has inspired me to get out more and to see more, and really trying to kind of make sure my kids are exposed to that too.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, Jaden asked a good question. What role do community-based and advocacy groups play in advancing the values we're talking about today? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. What role do community-based and advocacy groups play? Do they have a role to play? Wait,
Yes.
let's go. Let's okay, Milwaukee and Harriet.
Sorry. They have such a critical role to play. Working with advocates and community groups, and just getting their voices in the room and really kind of hearing from them. I think oftentimes in government they're really pushing us, right, and they're really kind of giving us the confidence to do some things that we might not otherwise do. So I would just ask them to keep fighting the good fight and keep moving forward. I know these are difficult times, but I think we still really deeply value your voices and your expertise about your communities.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I view the CBOs and advocacy organizations as really the eyes and ears on the ground. We can study and look at all these studies, the science of it, but what people are experiencing could be something very different. So I also encourage them to keep fighting the good fight, and it is a difficult time. But at least as long as we're here in California, we can continue supporting their missions and working and commit to working with them as we are currently.
Absolutely. Tim asked a question about what we can do to address public land threats in California right now, and it's not necessarily right in the swim lane of our discussion here today. But I want to respond to that and just let everybody know that we are really concerned about threats to public lands that are federally public lands, publicly accessible lands that are being discussed for sale or for transfer away from public use. And just know that there is we're leading an effort across California to make the case against the federal government doing that. And there was actually two speaker series ago was a great hour-long discussion with some leaders in different groups around how we're working to protect public lands. So would encourage you to check that out. We are to the end of our discussion, and an hour goes fast when you're with fascinating people, learning about your lives. It's been wonderful to visit with each of you. Thanks for taking time, for sharing insight, and helping us celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. As always, this discussion is a real highlight for our month. And for everybody who's joining, I want to share that next week, begins a new celebration, and that is Pride. June is the time that we celebrate our LGBTQ plus community, and it is a really fun month at the agency. So we've got both the flyer as well as the link to events that are happening. I want to draw your attention on February 15th, we'll be participating in the Sacramento Pride March as our agency. I'm really proud that Natural Resources and the California Environmental Protection Agency were the first state agencies that are actually formal participants in that parade. This will be our third year that we're doing it, and joined by the Health and Human Services Agency. So that's a great one to come out to if that's of interest. And it's all about just supporting each other and enabling and ensuring that everybody feels comfortable working in our agency and across the state, and essentially doing this work wherever you find yourself. So thanks for all who joined us, and we hope that you have participated in this month or will do so in the future, and have a great rest of your week. Take care.